Alright, I've written and recorded and rewritten and re-recorded this video so many times now because I keep learning new things to add to it, and also it's hard to figure out how to say everything I'm trying to say here without it being confusing, because modern nutrition science goes completely against the status quo. Calories aren't all that important. Calories don't matter? What are you talking about? They are literally the only thing that matters. I try to have conversations about this kind of stuff on social media like Imgur and Twitter, though of course, only if they ask for advice or ask a question. I'm not the annoying type to just pop in and go, actually. But I think my favorite response to the claims I've made, oh, good job defying science, nugget. Ah, yes. The science from 3 to 6 decades ago. I sure am defying it by, applying modern science instead, and I'm sure NASA and the Wright brothers would love to hear that too. Good job defying science, nuggets. We were literally in the air a few minutes ago, like, okay, I guess we're defying science, but that doesn't matter because we still did it. Are we bumblebees? It's just like with dinosaurs. Old paleontologists said they looked one way, and then as technology advanced and we learned more and more about them, we found out that our perception was super inaccurate. But because the older scientists said the thing was the way that it was, that's what all the people in the general public locked into their brains. And so now, despite knowing that it's completely wrong for decades, it's really hard to get the general public to change or update their perception of something. And the same thing is happening now with nutrition science and calories. Most nutrition science and nutritional theories still taught in the schools were developed in the 50s and 60s, with the biggest recent updates happening in the 90s, which was still 30 years ago now. And all of these since disproved beliefs have proven detrimental time and time again, but due to bureaucracy and food industry lobbying, it is super hard to change the curriculum. But even then, nutrition science in the last decade alone has revolutionized everything. And in the last few years, we've learned more and more. And the one big thing is that calories aren't as important as a lot of people claim they are. And that's not to say they aren't a factor, but they are not the only thing that matters. What I and some others have learned is that if you apply the rest of nutrition science correctly, you actually can ignore calories and lose weight. I lost 170 pounds on a calorie surplus, 4,000 to 6,000 calories per day. In fact, my eating more calories helped me lose weight, and we'll get more into that later. Anyway, you hear it all the time. Fancy fad diets don't work because the one and only singular factor of weight loss is calories in versus calories out. Eat less, move more. Except that's never been true. And anyone who's struggled to lose a lot of weight knows that. A recent semi-viral article that came out a few months ago, as of when I first started writing this dude went crazy with calorie counting and exercise. We're talking tracking every little thing on an Excel spreadsheet. Did it work? No. Though that's not to say counting calories doesn't work for anyone. If you have 10 or 20 pounds of weight to lose, then it absolutely works, which is where a lot of the mentality comes from. Most people into fitness only really had a few dozen pounds to burn. They applied calorie counting and exercise, and it worked. Therefore, it's the only thing that matters. But just because it worked doesn't mean it's the best way, which I'll also explain. But if you've got a lot more weight to lose, like 50 plus pounds of fat to lose, or if you are old or have any major health condition or care for your body long term, then yeah, it's not so simple. And not only have we always sort of known this, you have also always sort of known this. And in the last 10 years, now we have several major papers that show the thing that we all sort of knew in the back of our heads the whole time. And by the end of this video, I hope I'll be able to convince you. Well, no, I'm not convincing you, the science is. I'm going to show you a load of things that go completely against the calories in versus calories out is the only factor mentality. And most of them, you already know. Yeah, and yet you keep telling people it's just about eating less and moving more. Why? Because it's dogma? Dogma's hard to get rid of. I mean, how can you simplify one of, if not the, most complex biological machine in the known universe into such a simple sentence? It's basic thermodynamics, they say, except basic thermodynamics only works in a perfectly isolated environment, and the human body is anything but that. In fact, just to be a butt, at one point I'll go over how thermodynamics actually disproves this mentality further. Though to clarify, again, I'm not saying calories don't matter at all, because they do, just not nearly as much as people claim. And there's way more to our complex systems than just calories. Honestly, it's pretty stupid to summarize a library of information into 4 words. Speaking of which, despite this video's long length, I'm really only scratching the surface. The hope is that I will trigger you to start doing some of your own research into the information I give you, because you don't learn everything by watching a not doctor talk about it. Read their books. But ultimately, my hope here is that by making this a somewhat simple and fun, engaging video like this, I hope to spread these not as well-known scientific facts and theories around to people who would likely maybe not bother looking up this kind of stuff. I like helping those seeking help. This is all information I wish I knew when I first started trying and failing to lose weight, because once I actually applied this information, the weight fell off effortlessly. Completely effortlessly. Well, you're not a doctor. Well, yeah, doctors are only required to have 9 hours of nutrition lecture to graduate. I spent longer than that reading these. That's why doctors mainly sell pills. Plus, that's why I'm just saying things like, obviously go to the sources. Besides my own personal example here, I'll just be regurgitating science information from nutritionists and health scientists and such. These books are my main sources. Additional sources will be in the description, but if I don't specifically link a source, it's because it's one of these. Just know, again, I'm trying to present this in a way that makes it engaging and entertaining so that more people can hear this information without getting bored out of their minds. And that's a good thing. Get over yourself. Now then, before I start just listing things, who am I and what gives? Well, hi, I'm Austin. I'm that 20-something-year-old who applied a bit of health science and turned his life around and now can't shut up about it. Yeah, I'm that guy. I've lost 170 pounds in about a year without taking a step of exercise. Like, the most I've done is I have a standing desk. I hiked like twice. And I lost all that weight without a calorie cut at all. Even now, I'm still losing weight, albeit significantly more slowly now. Currently, according to calorie theory, I need to be eating under 1,900 calories a day in order to lose anything at all. Instead, I'm eating between 3,000 and 4,000 calories a day, near to double that, and I'm still losing weight. Well, then you must be moving more then. No, I'm a video game YouTuber. Grocery shopping is the most exercise I get in a week. I mean, I have a staircase in my house. Is that exercise? And no, I'm not some genetic miracle. I simply applied some very modern nutrition science. I actively read a ton of info and applied it. And besides, it's not just me. You'll be happy to know that, like I said, many doctors, personal trainers, and health people have been experimenting on the same thing, both on themselves and on others. Good to hear that, since you can't really trust information on the internet, which is where the eat more, move less thing is spouted all the times by angry commenters, And also where this video is, Well, for starters, let's start with the basics, because many don't even fully understand what a calorie is to begin with. So let's answer that. What even is a calorie? No, like, really, what is it? You don't often think about such specifics that often. Many assume it's like a particle or a molecule or something. It's just like your vitamins and minerals. It's the thing that's there and your body can use it for energy. That's why if you eat too many, you get fat. Too much energy not being used. Well, unfortunately, it's not so simple. A calorie is not a particle, it's a measurement of energy. In fact, it's a measurement of energy that doesn't have anything to do with the human body. Yeah. If you take a food and burn it with fire to heat up some water and measure all that, you're measuring calories. A calorie is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. It is not the amount of food energy your body uses or should use, and it doesn't take into account how efficiently the body uses the energy from any given food source. It is simply the measurement of heat needed to heat a gram of water 1 degree Celsius. Then you multiply that by 1,000 and you get a kcal, or a big calorie, or a food calorie. This is often just shortened to calorie, just to make things easy for everyone to understand. We have 2 units that are named the same thing. Lovely. It's like if we had an inch and a foot, but we just called both of them an inch. And this is one of many reasons I didn't bother counting calories when losing all the weight. Calories alone just don't give you enough information. And when I did count them out of curiosity, I found that I was eating over 4,000 of them a day, sometimes 6,000, and yet I was still just dropping the pounds regularly. More on that later. So, a calorie is a measurement of energy, but it doesn't tell you how well your body will utilize it based on the food it's attached to. Your gut bacteria play a huge role here too, and everybody's gut bacteria makeup is different. You eat 200 calories of steak, for example, you may very well get all 200 calories from that, but the guy next to you may only get 190 because of his gut bacteria, metabolic rate, heck, even intestinal length has a role in all this. Some foods also take more energy to digest, which comes from calories. So to get the calories out of them, you need to burn more calories, which ends up being sometimes a much smaller net gain. Fiber and fat are complex as heck. Sugar, bread, and pasta are not. So if you eat 100 calories of salad, well, are you putting in 100 calories? Technically, yeah, but are you getting 100 calories out of it? If it takes, just for an easy example, this is no actual numbers here, it's just easy math. Let's just say it takes 20 calories to digest that, meaning you have a net gain of 80 calories. Plus, vegetables are a great example of the gut bacteria thing. If you don't eat a lot of vegetables, your gut bacteria has a hard time adjusting, and during that adjustment period, you won't be absorbing all of the calories or nutrients or minerals or any of that for a while. You'll also get stomach aches, which is a factor in why many people quit diets. They don't ease themselves into eating salad and vegetables, they jump in full force, which gives them stomach aches because they aren't used to digesting all that fiber, and they get sick and they feel bad, so they quit. And come to think of it, how do calories get stored in the first place? It's obviously not magic. And it's obviously more than, well, you just eat them and they get absorbed. Right? No, I mean, what is the sort of specific mechanism in place? Because maybe if we know that specific mechanism of how calories are stored, maybe we can play around with it, huh? Your cells use glucose for energy primarily, so it's what they are always asking for, and so you eat a carbohydrate, be it some candy, a banana, granola, whatever. Your body enters digesting mode and converts it into glucose. The calories are now converted into glucose, because as glucose, the hormone insulin is then able to open the door to the cells for the cell to absorb the glucose, to store and burn it. But these cells, such as muscle and organ cells, won't eat any more than what they need. So if there is glucose left over, the insulin will store all of the remaining glucose, the calories in the form of glucose, into your fat cells. The idea here, the reason it does it, is that once you are no longer in digesting mode, meaning you haven't drinking or eaten anything with calories in quite a few hours, you begin fasting instead. In fasting mode, those fat cells will release the calories as free fatty acids for the other cells to use as fuel. They are called free because they don't need insulin to open the doors. So the fat cells get depleted, and this is how a healthy body maintains a healthy weight. So that was with carbohydrates. What about proteins and fats? Well, proteins and fat are what our bodies are made out of. So these are usually used for maintenance and repair. It's why there are essential fats and essential proteins, things that we need to eat because our bodies can't synthesize them, but there's no essential carb, because a carb is a carb. It is going to become glucose. Glucose, which is an easy form of energy, meaning calories. And even then, we can get that same energy from fat. I mean, we already do when our body is burning our own fat. Eating fat can also fuel our cells, but if you have enough excess calories from protein, then the body will actually convert that into glucose, which then triggers insulin, which triggers fat storage. This is why diets like Atkins still weren't the best. Low carb, low fat, high protein. The body just converts the protein into glucose instead. It's basically as if you ate a carb, just a little more work. Granted, it takes a lot more work, thus more energy to do that compared to a carb. But here's a fun bit. With this graph, you might have already noticed the fat on there. It takes significantly more time and energy to convert dietary fat into glucose, or to something that can be stored. So maybe we can tweak some diet balance, and we can limit how much insulin we secrete, and thus not give our bodies the tools that fat storage requires. This sounds complicated. So, obviously, calories are not that simple. They are complex, and there's no right answer for everyone, so I ignored them, and I have never been healthier because of that. But keep counting them if it helps, by all means. Go ahead. I'm just a dude on the internet. I can't tell you what to do. I can just tell you my example. and the example of many others. Take Sam Feltham, for instance, a qualified personal trainer who started experimenting with purposeful overeating to gain a bunch of weight and document the results. For science. He ate nearly 6,000 calories a day, but ate a specifically calculated diet, one that takes recent modern nutrition science into account, which will be further defined later. For now, just know it's like the opposite of the food pyramid. It's also similar to what I did, and he did this for 21 days. According to calorie theory, which states that somewhere around 3,500 excess calories equals 1 pound of weight gain, he should have gained 16 pounds. Instead, he gained less than 3. And what was interesting was that despite the very mild weight gain, his waistline actually shrunk an inch, which points to the fact that the weight that he gained was lean mass, muscle. And he didn't increase his exercise. He was documenting all of this. He was doing his regular amount. So he lost the weight and returned to his original form, and then was going to do it again. This time, he kept his calories exactly the same as last time, but this time he listened to the good old food pyramid. But of course, exemplified the amounts to reach the higher calorie count. The excellent government-sanctioned standard American diet. But if a calorie is a calorie, and that is all that matters, then the exact same thing should happen to him, right? Well, if that were true, it would, but it didn't because it's not true. The human body is not so simple. This time he gained 15.5 pounds, and gained 3 inches to his waist. That's pretty close to what calorie theory said would happen. But then why didn't it happen before if it's the same calories? That's what this video helps to explain. In fact, why don't I give an opposing example now? People reference articles like these all the time, especially the eat less, move more, that's literally the only thing, people. Here we have nutrition professor Mark Hobb. He lost 27 pounds eating a plethora of Twinkies, donuts, and Nutty Buddies, the trashiest of food possible. How did he do it? Well, he cut his calories. So clearly, calories are the only thing that matter, right? Well, what if I told you that digging a little deeper, this article actually further supports a more modern theory instead of calorie theory? How? We'll try to figure that out, actually, as I explain the science and everything, starting off with the big list. Number 1. Eat more, move less, that's all there is to it. And its variants like, just shrink your meals, it's literally nothing but portion control, that's all. These quotes make several assumptions that are simply untrue. And now let's list those assumptions so we can utterly destroy them later on after the list. Number 1, calories in and calories out are two separate things, totally independent. It's just in and out, that's all. No. Number 2, your calorie out is always the same besides when you're exercising. No. And by the way, that's called your basal metabolic rate. Number 3, your fat deposits are just always filling and expelling based on your eating and moving. No. Close, but no. You have full control over your calories in. It is entirely 100% willpower based. Again, close, but no. And the biggest one of all, a calorie is a calorie. What have we been talking about? And before just delving into all those details, let's make one more list real quick. For big list number 2, let's just quickly go over things that you might already know that go against the idea of eat less, move more, that's all there is to it. And let's just say number 1 was the example of myself, that personal trainer, and many, many more who've been talking about this kind of thing. If calorie theory was true, then what we and many more have done would not have worked. And it worked. But for the next part of the list, number 2, medication. You aren't eating more or less calories or exercising more or less because of a pill now, are you? And yet, weight loss and weight gain are some of the most common medication side effects. So clearly something else is going on. Number 2.5, basically the same as medication, illness. Something is changing your body chemistry. So even if you keep calories the exact same, your body weight might fluctuate one way or the other depending on that balance. Number 3, age. Commonly known fact, as you get older, it gets harder to lose weight. You can be moving just as much and eating the same calories that you used to, and yet you start to gain weight as you age, so clearly something other than calories are going on. Number 4, sex. Commonly known fact, women have a harder time losing weight than men, no matter the age. If a man and a woman of the exact same everything eat the same amount in and exercise the same amount out, based on their individual needs, the man will be better off. If eat less, move more was true, then the rest of these would not be true. Clearly, something else is going on. Number 5, menopause. When late middle-aged women lose their period, they enter this state. It makes weight loss even harder, and many women at this point find themselves gaining weight despite zero changes to their diet or activity levels. If eat less, move more was true, then this and the rest would not be true. Clearly, something else is going on. Number 6, stress. Another commonly known fact. Aren't all of these? Stress levels are a known source for weight gain, even if you stick with a strict diet while stressed, meaning you aren't stress eating. Stress can still lead to weight gain. Clearly, something besides calories is going on. Number 7, sleep. Not getting enough of it makes you fat and doesn't have anything to do with your calories. It's just sleep. Number 8, obesity. A bit weird to list here, but it is now a well-documented fact that it is harder for obese people to trigger fat burning in the first place than those of us who are just a little overweight. So clearly, something has to be going on inside of us differently outside of calories in, calories out. It is not just simple calorie math that works the same for everyone. Number 9, statistics. Believe it or not, the statistics show that we are exercising more than ever and eating healthier than ever before. Healthier is in quotes though, because, government sanctioned health versus actual health. Yet, we're still the fattest we've ever been. Number 10, the hypothalamus, which is a region of the brain. Brain damage to this area causes extreme weight gain. Even with a diet of 500 calories, fat deposits and weight is gained. Suck it, thermodynamics. Number 11, a massive load of health problems ranging from heart issues to a dysfunctional liver, regardless of calories and exercise. These often all lead to weight gain. And number 12, insulin. As a type 1 diabetic, this is my favorite. In summary, for now, it's been known for decades now that insulin is a growth hormone. I explained it earlier. It's how you store calories as glucose into fat cells, making them bigger. It is literally how you get fat. When a doctor prescribes insulin, the user will find that the biggest side effect is weight gain. And sometimes, if the diabetic injects insulin in the same spot every single day, they'll actually get a bump of fat. Because all the insulin's right there, so that's where it's going to be storing it all. And then there's diabulimia, a condition where a type 1 diabetic person purposefully does not inject their insulin. Why? Well, to lose weight. And they do. They get a load of other health issues too, because you need insulin for certain other things, like cleaning the Alzheimer's causing plaque from your brain, but they do lose weight. Effortlessly, despite what they're eating. So there's that. It really does just melt away. In my case, before I knew I was a type 1 diabetic and I just thought I was really, really sick, I lost like 30 pounds. Little did I know, it was because my pancreas was dying and was slowly losing the ability to make insulin. And when I was in the hospital for a week, I regained all that weight back and then some. In a week, maybe 2. My blood sugar was dangerously high, so they gave me a load of insulin all week. And what do you know? Insulin makes you fat. Insulin is not a calorie. Neither is stress, or brain damage, or any of those other factors. And I haven't even listed everything yet. And if I wanted, I could expand medications and health problems into a list of over 100 individual medications that cause weight loss or weight gain, because one of their side effects is the slowing or speeding of the pancreas, which creates insulin. But listing them all would take too long, so let's put that on pause for now and start explaining some stuffs. Starting with those assumptions from the first list. Fun fact, your calories out throughout the day does not stay the same and is totally dependent upon your calories in. While the common belief makes perfect sense at first, I mean, your body uses so much energy a day, and if it doesn't get that energy from food, it will pull it from your fat instead. I mean, that sounds completely reasonable, but our bodies are jerks. Pessimists, and through numerous studies, one even 100 years ago, we've proved this, though the details were only proven much more recently. But the funnest example was all the way from back in 1919. These effects were documented at the Carnegie Institute of Washington in a study of calorie reduction. Look into that study for details. But in summary, the results were interesting. Weight loss did happen at first, as expected, but then suddenly stopped. And it then only happened slowly. And while this was happening, volunteers suffered numerous side effects just from calorie reduction. and the fact that there was a lot of it, and that they walked 22 miles a day. But yeah, calories in, calories out, right? But still, bear with me for now. These side effects were a slower heart rate, brittle hair and nails, and hair even falling out. They were feeling cold always. They had lower body temperature, less blood pressure, a foggy mind, less strength and endurance. The list goes on, and it essentially proved something. Something that, thanks to modern science, we now know the finer details of, but the example remains. When you lower your caloric intake by 30%, your resting metabolic rate falls with it 30 to 40%. Think about it like this for a moment. Your body doesn't have a set amount of energy that it burns every day. Instead, it burns what it gets. And if it's getting less, it will use less. Basic thermodynamics, eh? Your body isn't stupid. It doesn't want to die, so it slows down, conserves energy. It begins ignoring less important things like hair follicles and nails. It lowers your body temperature just a bit. It lowers your heart rate just a bit. And your brain power starts to slow, as does your immune system, because these are all the things that calories are for. And it's not getting those calories anymore. It's just like a bank account. If your income suddenly drops, you are going to have to lower your spending or risk going bankrupt. Notably, this is why everybody who tries to lose weight through calories has an easy time with it at first. The first couple dozen pounds may fall off easily, but then, for most, it slows down and then eventually stops working. Unless you lower your calories significantly more and exercise significantly more, but for most, it starts reaching some pretty drastic levels. But this happens because now their basal metabolic rate, or metabolism, is slower, because your calories out is dependent upon your calories in. And what's scary, as the 1919 and many more recent studies confirmed, this slowing of the metabolism lasts an indefinite amount. All of the volunteers, when returning to their regular diets, gained their weight right back and then kept gaining. One 2008 study documented that even a year later with their volunteers, their metabolisms still hadn't recovered from the calorie reduction diet. The body doesn't know if energy is going to just become hard to come by again or not. It's a survival tactic. Another drought could be around the corner. And anyway, another commonly well-known pop culture fact is that all of the contestants on The Biggest Loser, a TV reality show about losing the most weight through calorie reduction and vigorous exercise, regained all of their weight within a few years of leaving the show, and most of them are even bigger now than they were before the show. And that's to be expected. That's how our bodies work. And we didn't even really cover all the mental, psychological stuff that reducing your calories does to your poor brain, which includes the development of eating disorders, as well as your brain making you think you're hungry even if you are not. But again, it's all things that would take forever to explain. Just know that it's not pretty. And all calorie reduction does is make you tired, cold, hungry, headaches, aches and pains. It gives you short-term weight loss and a long-term slower metabolism. And that's not to say you can't just keep lowering your calories and increasing exercise, though. You can maintain your healthy weight by slowly reducing the calories more and more. Some people have gotten them to under 500. And then because you can't really go under that without starving to death, they ballooned up while eating under 1,000 calories a day still. Fun. Anyway, one more quick bit about the psychological aspect. Calories in isn't really even a huge matter of willpower once you start reducing calories long term. You've probably heard of the brain-gut connection, and it's a strong force. In fact, literally, the more you reduce your calories, the harder it gets. Like, there's a physiological thing going on. Your fat cells are not getting everything they are used to, so they can become greedy, and thus won't release energy for the rest of your cells to use. So those other cells tell you that you are hungry, even though you have plenty of free fatty acids stored to burn for this exact reason. But they're not, because your fat cells are greedy, because you deprived them, because of your calories being too low. Enter a common saying in the health community. You didn't get fat because you were always hungry. You are always hungry because you are getting fat. The fat cells are essentially rationing out their stored energy, releasing it more slowly and even more slowly as time goes on, because they don't know if they are going to be able to refill that soon or not. The calories are so low, so you get hungrier and hungrier. Your brain starts suffering. All you can think about is food. The cravings grow. You are literally starving yourself slowly with a calorie reduction. And no amount of willpower will keep you from listening to that brain-gut connection long term if you don't do anything to fix it. And lowering your calories further is not how you fix it. Again, reducing them too much for too long just makes it worse. Also, a study on children found that after sports activities, you get hungrier. You didn't need a study to tell you that, did you? It's called working up an appetite for a reason. But what's interesting is that it and more studies found that, in general, of course, your brain won't feel satisfied until you've replenished all of the calories you just burned and then had some more on top of that. Your brain wants a net gain of calories after activity. That's the brain-gut connection, and that's even in perfectly healthy people. So to the folks that say calories are the only factor, like, do you want to feel miserable while dieting? Is that what you're saying to me? No. You eat too little, you move too much for what you ate, and then you don't replenish what you burned, you're gonna feel like crap. And feeling like crap is why people quit these diets. We should be encouraging healthier lifestyles and diets that work, not pointing fingers and blaming others for failing at the diet that the status quo says is the one you should be doing, even though it's not. If people are miserable while doing something, they're going to stop. It's human nature. It's what we're programmed to do. After my last health video, I got so many happy emails from viewers that all basically summarized to, I had no idea weight loss could be this easy. Thanks for opening my eyes. Thanks for the help. I did more research afterwards. Yeah. If the weight loss is that hard, you're doing it wrong. Unless you're getting over literal sugar carb addiction. That did make the first month hard. But after that, the fat literally melts off effortlessly. Another fun fact, a Dr. Herman Ponzer studied a nomadic hunter-gatherer tribe for a while and found some interesting things. Despite them constantly moving and eating off the land and all, they still burned the same number of calories that the typical first world office job Westerner does. Other studies found that people who work out or play sports also burn only slightly more calories than those who don't. All in all, with exercise, you do burn a ton of calories in a burst when exercising. But your body balances that out by temporarily lowering your metabolic rate for hours afterwards. You may have heard the fact that athletes tend to have slower average heart rates than most people. That's a slower resting metabolic rate. They're not burning as many calories when they're not exercising because their body is saving them for when they are. And on top of that, you do a sport and then you get home and you're sore. You want to lay down, you're lazy, you're tired. Meanwhile, here's this other guy, healthy, not really active. He gets home and he has all of his energy left over. His heart rate stays the same. He gets stuff done around the house, doesn't feel miserable. It all balances out. Now that is not, absolutely not to say that exercise is bad though. Of course, exercise is excellent for you. It is fantastic for your body and has loads of health benefits, especially for muscles and organ function. But weight loss isn't inherently one of them. Why do you think really strong guys tend to still have a fat stockpile? Though there is one factoid example of exercising for weight loss that's great. An increase in muscle mass does lead to increase your basal metabolic rate. Muscles take a lot more work, calories, for maintenance, especially if you are exercising them all the time. So are you doing strength training or cardio? One helps a good bit, the other not so much. Again, for weight loss specifically. Cardio is great for your heart, lungs, and so many other things. I just know that I'd have quit my diet forever ago if I had to jog. The muscle thing makes perfect sense though. How does your body maintain those muscles? Through calories. Again, the muscles aren't as important as the brain, lungs, and heart, so the body slows down on maintaining muscles when there is a calorie deficit, only adding to the misery of diet and exercise. Your muscles aren't recovering as quickly because of your calorie cut, making you more miserable and thus more likely to quit the diet. Again, we should be encouraging things that make healthy lifestyles easier for more people, not encouraging the status quo that makes people fail and quit. But anywho, loads of people know the whole exercise doesn't help that much, get over yourselves thing already. A well-known term or saying among personal trainers is, you can't outrun a bad diet and its variants. In fact, it's been becoming more and more clear as time goes on. When it comes to your weight, exercise is like 5 to 15% of the equation. Diet's where it's at. And the calories in versus calories out mantra seems to equate those in some people's minds, like they're literally 50-50. It's diet and exercise. And that's wrong. Just straight up. Telling people they need to exercise to lose weight, or they are doing it wrong, or are lazy and won't get results it's super unhealthy and unencouraging. And you should be encouraging them. Even if they aren't doing everything, at least they are doing something. Encourage that and get over yourself. And besides, plenty of people have health problems that prevent most exercises, and this mentality that exercise is needed doesn't encourage them to even bother trying to lose weight and be healthier. Plus, a lot of exercises while super overweight is terrible for your poor joints. And plus, after losing 100 or so pounds, moving gets a lot easier, so then you get all the energy and motivation to exercise. Plus, now it's not as bad for your joints. So burn the fat first, then start exercising, if you're so inclined. Now let's go over one of my favorite studies, the Women's Health Study of 2006, with nearly 50,000 women all closely monitored in the biggest, most expensive, and ambitious study as of this date. And it found, well, all of this. Everything I've said. Through 7.5 years, they tracked a group of postmenopausal women following a low-calorie with exercise regimen and a control group. The Eat Less, Move More group did lose weight at first, and by the end of the 7 years, they were all about the same. All of them. Did they replace that fat with muscle? No. In fact, they were on average almost an inch fatter than the control group. They damaged their metabolisms. And this study has been done again and again all over the world with different ages and races and all that. Same results. The study set out to prove the Eat Less, Move More notion, and it wound up going against it. The garbage, light, low-fat diet industry. Ha! Biggest health study to date, proving evidence against what it was trying to prove. I love it. So, lower calories equals no good long term. Got it. But clearly eating too many is what makes you fat. Did you not hear the first points in the video? But here's another favorite study of mine, just because of how it progressed. A Dr. Sims in the late 1960s wanted to show that eating too much makes you fat, and he gave mice an infinite supply of food. They didn't get fat. They stopped eating when they got full. Because obviously. Okay, next step. Force feed the mice. This caused their metabolism to go up. They've got more calories available, so their bodies use them. Higher heart rate, more bodily function of repair and muscle building, higher body temperature, etc. So the mice still didn't gain weight. Okay, well, mice are pretty different than humans anyway. Let's get some volunteers from the University of Vermont, all lean and healthy, and make them fat. Eat what you want, and a lot of it. As much as you can, he told them. And they did. Documented everything. And none of them gained weight. Turns out, willfully overeating is pretty hard. We didn't know the specifics at the time, but we have hormonal systems in place that tell us exactly when you should start and stop eating. Obesity tends to happen because this hormonal system is broken. That's not an excuse, of course, because you can easily fix it, but more on that later. Anyway, have you ever eaten so much that you get a little nauseated just by the smell of food? This isn't because of real nausea per se. I mean, it is real, but it's not because of food poisoning or something not sitting right with you. It's your brain making you think you are nauseated so that you stop eating. You've already eaten enough. God, please stop! This is also what satiety is. Believe it or not, the volume of food isn't even the main factor when it comes to feeling full, or at least it's not the only thing. There are several factors at play. Your body knows roughly how many calories and nutrients you've consumed relatively quickly after you've eaten them. And when it finishes its checklist of things that it needs, it tells you to stop eating. You feel satisfied. Or nauseated. And because of that, well, the students, well, they wouldn't overeat. At least not too much. When they did, they started feeling sick, so they stopped. Leading Dr. Sims to do the next best thing. He went to the prison. Oh, the prisoners volunteered. Anyway, the prisoners had their exercise limited and everything they ate monitored, and they started by eating 4,000 calories a day, and some tapped out already, quit. They were sick of feeling sick, but others were continuously pushed to over 10,000 calories a day. And over the next 6 months, they did actually gain 20% of their body weight, which, by the way, was much less than what Dr. Sims expected based on calorie theory. But it turned out that upon eating all these calories, their basal metabolic rate, or metabolisms, also rose by 50%. Their bodies are trying actively to burn away all the extra calories because it has them. And sure enough, When the 6 months of overeating ended and they all went back to just eating normally, many of them didn't keep any of their fat. It just melted away for the next few months. This was obviously very confusing to Dr. Sims, but he had a new hypothesis and wanted to test it. So next up was taking skinny people, making them fat, and taking fat people and making them skinny. Entirely through calorie theory, by the way. He stopped them when the two groups were the same weight, and found that exactly what we should expect at this point. The previously skinny people were burning double the calories that the previously fat people were. The fat people slowed their metabolism, and it will likely remain slow for a long, long time. And the skinny people sped their metabolism up. And because of that, once the study was over, they both slowly returned to their original weight. This all points to one half of the modern day theory of weight gain and obesity. It's not so much calories in, calories out. It's more so, as Dr. Jason Fung, a world leader in weight loss, metabolic, and diabetic health science, I'm a huge fan. As he puts it, think of your body weight as a set point, like the temperature on a thermostat. It gets too hot or too cold, the thermostat kicks in and returns the house to the original temperature. Likewise, your body has a set point for its total fat. If it goes above that, it starts activating things, speeding up your metabolism to bring it back down. If your weight goes below that, your body starts deactivating things to stop your weight from dropping, and thus makes it easier to return back to normal, without even overeating. Again, you could say it's basic thermodynamics, or at least as much of thermodynamics as eat less, move more is. Your body only uses as much energy as it has readily available to it. Emphasis on readily. Stored fat is not the easiest thing to get calories out of, especially when food is present. As in at all. And especially if your hormonal balance is set up in a way to not allow you to burn fat in the first place, or at the very least makes it more difficult. In short, if your calorie intake rises, your body burns more. If it lowers, it uses less. Now, is there always a small excess in dietary calories? If that's the case, then the stored fat in your body doesn't need to worry about rationing or getting greedy. So, while fasting, it releases what it has stored. But if you have too few calories consistently, well, the fat cells say, wait, we better slow down and hold on to this. We don't want to starve to death. But then, the big question is, why is this set point different for different people? And how does it change? Well, you'll be happy to know that it has little to do with calories, and no, it's not genetics either. You aren't destined to a life of fat because you are fat or had fat parents. Though, of course, there is still a minor role being played there, but anyone can overcome it. Think of it like... I don't remember where I heard it. I think it's this one. Think of it like genetics gives you a gun, but you load all of the bullets and shoot yourself. There has to be a better analogy than that. Tangent! Just remembered another study that found that it is not exactly genetics that plays a role in weight and such. Rather, it's your mother's hormonal balance while pregnant, because that literally becomes your default hormonal balance at birth, predisposing you to excess weight gain, not through DNA, but through that default hormone balance, which can be changed if you let it. Back to the main point. So the specific name of the modern theory on weight gain hasn't been finalized as far as I know yet, but let's just call it hormonal theory of obesity. Hormones control, literally everything that goes on in your body that you don't control yourself. It's just like breathing and beating your heart. And they also control this thermostat, this set point. Also, hormones change as you age, are different in men and women, and change a ton post-menopause. Medications mess with hormone-producing glands, as does a lack of sleep and stress. Heck, stress is a hormone, cortisol, and those are all of the things that everyone already knows can affect your weight. You've known this all along. But this doesn't mean the set point is out of your control. It just means you have to take control from your hormones. Become a biohacker. After all, your hormonal balance is a direct reflection of all the food you eat. You truly are what you eat. Many foods contain varying levels of hormones themselves, directly changing your balance. Some foods even have molecules that look similar to specific hormones, so the hormone receptors grab them, which blocks them from grabbing the real hormones and getting their effects. changing their bioavailability. The quickest and easiest example to explain is like with caffeine. Caffeine doesn't give you energy like people think. Rather, it just blocks the hormone that makes you think you're tired, because they look similar. But anyway, interestingly enough, I've already mentioned the dominant hormone in hormonal theory. It's insulin. Allow me to explain. And while I'm doing that, you'll probably make your own connections along the way. In fact, a lot of this you already knew. You just didn't know what to point to exactly. Insulin does many very important things in the body, but its first job, the thing it always prioritizes, is controlling your blood sugar. It takes the sugar in the blood, which is glucose, which has the calories, and stores it in various cells. First, it stores it in the glycogen stores in the liver and muscles. But what is this for? Well, glycogen, simply put, is stored sugars, energy that is readily available to use. You eat to fill up those stores, and then when you exercise or sleep, or even just, not eat for a while, your body taps into these stores for energy. Then, the next time you have sugar in your blood, your pancreas will pump out more insulin to put sugar into the glycogen stores again. Interestingly, you only have about 90 minutes of exercise available in these stores, which is where carb loading comes in. You ever see those images of athletes eating a massive pile of pasta or bread? They do this because carbohydrates, unless it's a fiber or some sugar alcohols, convert into glucose in the blood, always, triggering insulin to put that sugar energy into their glycogen, slowly while they're running the marathon. They burn it all up in 90 minutes, but they just ate a ton of carbs, there's a ton of sugar, so it's going to keep refilling as it's being burned. It is perfectly fine then for someone to eat a lot of carbs before running a marathon or playing a full game of soccer. One of my favorite documentaries on the matter puts it this way: many people are eating as if they are about to play football, and then they sit on the sofa and watch other people do it. Because if, and it's a very big if your glycogen stores are full, thus they cannot fit any more of this glucose energy in them, what's your body going to do? It has all this sugar energy and nowhere to put it. Too much sugar in the blood is toxic, so it has to get rid of it somehow. Well, a number of things happen. Your body starts producing more insulin to essentially force feed your cells, which your cells don't like, so they eventually start breaking off their insulin receptors to avoid being force fed, which leads to insulin resistance. So the same way an alcoholic needs more alcohol to get drunk, you now need more insulin to get the blood sugar job done. And this cycle leads eventually to type 2 diabetes. And it's totally independent of your weight. It's common for obese people to get it because they are obese for the same reasons you develop it, too many carbohydrates, but non-obese people can still get it too. In fact, non-obese type 2 diabetes is incredibly common in China and Japan. Now just think about their diets. It's rice and noodles and sugar. But once you get type 2 diabetes, you do start ballooning up. Your hormone balance is so out of whack. Insulin no longer works properly, and it's now estimated that 1/3 of millennial and Gen Z Americans will get diabetes in their lifetime. Whoa, and that's just one of the things your body does with the extra glucose, and the other one's bad too. With nowhere left to store sugar, well, your liver starts converting the glucose into triglycerides through a process called de novo lipogenesis. This raises your bad cholesterol, for one, and also turns that glucose into a specific type of saturated fat that is designed to be easily absorbed by your fat cells, thus making you fat. This just in, sugar is bad for you and makes you fat. Surprising no one. This further removes calories from the all high and mighty only thing you need to consider, because 100 calories of carbohydrates, especially if they are simple, is so much worse for you in terms of fat gain than 100 calories of fiber, protein, or even of fat. A calorie is not a calorie, so why bother counting them? In fact, this also points to an older nutrition myth that has been popularly debunked several times decades ago, so it's not really a myth anymore, besides some lingering, willfully ignorant people. But it was previously believed that saturated fat makes you fat, and the big myth is what gives you diabetes. I mean, we can witness that happening in the body in the process I just mentioned. There's saturated fat in the blood. You're getting fat and diabetic, so obviously it's because you're eating saturated fat. Here, eat this cereal instead. This led to the low-fat craze, which made everybody more obese and diabetic. And since then, we have learned that the statement is technically correct. There is a load of bad saturated fat in the blood going into your fat cells, making you fat and diabetic. But this was not the fat that you ate. It's not dietary fat. It's the fat that your body specifically made out of carbohydrates that you ate too much of. At the time, we were only looking at the middle step and assuming it was the first. And fun fact, this is also the same thing with bad cholesterol. Many people avoid eggs because they are filled with cholesterol, but did you know that dietary cholesterol has very little effect on your body's own actual cholesterol? You need to eat like 36 eggs in a day to have a detectable negative change. Do you eat 36 eggs in a day? No? Well, then you're good. Also, one study found that eating 3 eggs a day will actually improve your cholesterol levels, meaning raising the good, lowering the bad, when compared to eating no eggs at all. This bad cholesterol, such as LDL for instance, is formed from the same process just mentioned. There's too much sugar, so the body converts it into fat, cholesterol. Thus, it's easier to store. But if there's way too much of it, then, well, the cholesterol gets stuck, clogging your arteries. So technically, yes, cholesterol and fat clogs your arteries, but not the kind that you eat. It's the kind you converted from glucose. There are exceptions, of course, because this is all super complicated, but like good rule of thumb is to avoid all trans fats and things like vegetable oil, canola oil, and margarine. Oh boy, those are the things that people were told to use to help them lose weight, and that are allowed to advertise themselves as heart healthy, even though they are literally the worst because the laws haven't been updated since we thought that was the case. No wonder this is all confusing. So again, this just in, sugar is bad for you, surprising no one. It's not the eggs, avocado, and coconut oil in your breakfast that's making you fat, it's the whole grain toast. This also confirms a problem that so many people have. I just don't get it. I'm eating less, I'm moving more, I'm eating healthy cereal for breakfast and healthy granola bars and fruit for snacks. Why aren't I losing weight? Because in the presence of excess insulin, your body generates and stores fat. Period. Hard stop. It does not burn it. One or the other. I mean, technically there's always a little bit of both going on, but to get the idea across, one or the other. Digesting mode or fasting mode. Have you eaten in the last 4 to 6 hours? You are still in digesting mode. Stop snacking. You're eating all of these diet foods that are low in fat but high in carbs, which do the opposite of what you want. In these cases, you do not have easy access to your fat stores. In fact, in most cases, your body won't even like to touch your fat storage unless your glycogen is at the very least partially empty, if not completely empty. And do you know how to empty your glycogen? Well, vigorous exercise for one. Like I said, exercise can help. It's just not the main thing. I mean, you can also just fast for a long while. Or vigorous exercise for 90 minutes to empty it. And then, once it's empty, just don't refill it again. And the weight falls off effortlessly. Excess carbs is how you fill it. So, like, don't. If you aren't eating, then the body has to pull energy from the glycogen. And when the glycogen is low, it starts pulling from your fat stores. Thus, low-carb diets, such as the ketogenic diet, plus intermittent fasting, equals the easiest, most effortless weight loss I've ever attempted, and that many others have attempted also. Notice that in this whole last little bit of explaining all that, calories aren't a factor. That's what I did. The first month was challenging. You might have heard of keto flu, which is actually withdrawal symptoms because you were literally addicted to sugar. I mean, if you weren't addicted to sugar, then you wouldn't have had keto flu. I had a headache for a day and that was it. So like, I was fine. But speaking of snacking, I mentioned it a while ago, trust me. We're always talking about what to eat, but not when to eat. It's a lot rarer. Let's talk about that real quick. Just a generation or two ago, your mom would slap you for snacking between meals. You'll ruin your dinner! And these days, people don't care. Snack food sales are the highest they've ever been. In fact, now we have the opposite advice. Snack between meals. Eat 6 times per day. And then they wonder why they are fat. Eat 6 times per day sounds like something that a snack food manufacturer would want you to think is true. The average number of meals in the US used to be 3, but today it is 6 to 10. 6 to 10! And the kids, the poor kids, getting obese as a kid is really hard. But childhood obesity is skyrocketing. And what are we teaching kids these days? Eat your basically candy cereal, have a snack at recess, have lunch, have a snack in the car on the way home or a soda or something, have dinner, and then have a snack or some milk before bed. Not to mention all the little miscellaneous snacks on top of that. And yes, any drink that has calories counts as a snack too. This is, simply put, bad. Each time you eat, especially if there's sugar and or grains involved, you spike insulin. So throughout the bulk of the history of modern man, this graph is how your insulin levels should look throughout the day, based on the idea of 3 square meals a day. When you are above the black line, your body is storing fat. It is taking the food you ate, storing its vitamins, minerals, and of course, its energy and sugars. You know, weight gain. And when you're below that black line, all of that food energy is being used. Your body is now running off of its reserves, rather than the food in your digestive system. The whole reason your body stores fat in the first place is for energy later when you're not eating. So during this time, you aren't storing fat, you are using it, burning it, just by existing. But now, if we take this graph and add another 3 to 4 meals to it, sure, they're smaller snacks, but still, notice the time. What do you spend most of your time in? Fat storage or fat burning mode? Do you have a net gain or a net loss of fat on a daily basis? Well, how often do you eat insulin-triggering foods? Well, Americans eat 6 to 10 meals a day now, and that's primarily grains because they're cheap. And then you wonder why we're so fat. So clearly, when to eat is super important, because along with things like vigorous exercise, simply just not eating is also how you empty your glycogen, essentially your body's front line of energy reserves. It's the first to empty when you're done digesting, but it's also the first to fill when you eat again. And more often than not, your body doesn't want to burn your excess fat unless the glycogen is empty, which never happens if you eat too often. And for many, even eating right before bed and then waking up and eating breakfast isn't enough time to start burning that excess fat. You've probably heard that eating before bed is bad, and that's the main reason why. Sleeping is the only time many people aren't eating, so it's the only time your body has to burn fat at all by default. But if you eat right before bed, then even that doesn't happen. And the thing that fills glycogen the fastest and the most? Carbohydrates, sugar and grains. So in a way, how much you eat isn't as important as just eating less often. Using your glycogen gives all the carbs you eat a place to go, because without giving them a place to go, because you snack all the time, almost all of the carbs you eat become fat and bad cholesterol through de novo lipogenesis. So carbohydrates do have their place in nutrition, especially for very active people, but the modern human is abusing them to detrimental amounts, which vastly increases their insulin levels. After all, many studies have found that the more obese you are, the more insulin you secrete in the first place. And interestingly, this is where the previously mentioned changing the set point begins to occur. Did you know that body fat actually produces hormones itself? Yeah, it's more than just energy storage, as it also produces a hormone called leptin, and its job is to make you satiated. It's the opposite of ghrelin, which makes you feel hungry. This makes perfect sense for our bodies always wanting to balance themselves. If you're slightly overweight, your body wants to return to normal. So perfect. Your fat tells the brain that you are not hungry because you can just run off the fat stores that you have instead. Your set point is healthy. You get an extra pound of fat or 5, you aren't going to be as hungry in the future. And your cravings, especially for carbs, will be reduced. On top of this, your metabolism speeds up, all in hopes that you will soon return to your default healthy weight. All is balanced, all is good. But, well, here's the problem. The brain's systems can focus on either insulin or leptin. So long as insulin is working hard, putting a bunch of glucose all over, leptin cannot be heard. Heard is in quotes, because obviously it's the brain. It doesn't have its own ears. So if you're producing a ton of insulin because of your burrito and sodas all the time and snacking a bunch, then leptin can't do its job right. Because you eat these things, it takes too long for the brain to hear the signal to make you feel full and cease cravings. And thus, we enter a new vicious cycle. As you gain more weight, because you're not satisfied and you crave factually addictive junk food, because you can't hear the leptin, you start producing more leptin because you have more body fat. The fat gets louder. And this continues and continues and continues until eventually, just like insulin resistance, you now have leptin resistance. There is so much leptin trying to jam its way into your leptin receptors that the receptors get overworked and damaged. And this is where the hormone theory of weight gain goes from fact to technically theoretical, because we don't yet know the specific trigger per se, or if there really is a set point as far as the brain itself is concerned. Right now, though, many believe, but have yet to confirm, that this set point is as simple as your base hormonal balance. If you have too much leptin, thus get too much leptin resistance, and too much insulin, your set point raises. Your diet and lifestyle changes that balance, and that balance determines your set point. It's another cycle. So then, if you change your lifestyle in specific ways to change your hormonal balance, you can lose weight near effortlessly. Like what I did. I still feel so bad when people congratulate me on losing so much weight because I didn't really do anything. It felt effortless. At least after the first month or so. The first month was kind of challenging, the process of the hormonal balance changing. But once they were fixed, the rest of it was basically effortless waiting. But I mean, think about it. By balancing your hormones, you're not forcing or starving your body to change like calorie reduction and increased exercise does. You are instead letting your body do its own job. It's doing all the work for you. You just have to let it. It's slowly becoming healthy again, and losing weight this way doesn't damage your metabolism. I didn't lower my calories, so my body wasn't worried about there being a drought or anything. Rather, I kept my calories high to get that 50% metabolism speed bonus. And then, rather than force starving my body via calorie reduction, I just let my body do what it naturally wants to do. Lose all the extra weight that it being there also harms my survivability, so the body doesn't want all the excess weight. You just have to let it get rid of it. One study found that the ketogenic diet, which is what I did, is one of the best ways to lose weight hormonally because it causes little to no drop in basal metabolic rate. For example, let's say you're a bit overweight and you use 3,500 calories a day to maintain yourself. Now normally, meaning calorie reduction, if you lose a bunch of weight that way, your metabolic rate drops with you. More often than not, further than you'd like it, if done through calorie restriction diet. But through keto, even after losing 60 pounds, your calories to maintain yourself or your metabolic rate remains the same or changes very slightly. It's no wonder then that I can still eat 4, sometimes 6,000 calories a day and not gain weight. In a way, my metabolism is still acting as if I'm 370 pounds instead of my actual 205. And get this, it's not just using that energy willy-nilly, it's doing what bodies always do when they have an excess of energy. Increase brain function, increase energy and activity, and further repair itself. All things keto-goers regularly report. Man, and that's why I love this topic and talking about it so much. Even if I'm not the best at explaining it, read these books, please. I just want people to know that it's an option and know sort of how to do it, to get them started on their own research, because this video is pretty baseline and obviously I'm not a super expert or anything. I'm just a nutrition nerd at this point. But it's crazy to me how easy it can be to just vastly improve your health after always hearing about the struggles of everyone around me and people online and having to persevere and push themselves through it, and oh, the struggle is real, and oh man, your struggle is inspiring because I want to do that too, and it hurts and it's so hard, but it doesn't have to be. The eat less, move more mentality doesn't encourage people. It needlessly discourages too many of them, which sucks. Feel free to lose weight however you want, but don't go around saying your way is the only way when it actually isn't. You're only bringing more people to failure and adding more suffering to the dieting world, and are the reason why the losing weight is bad for you at all, stay fat mentality exists. Yeah, I've seen that. Tumblr was a mistake. Now then, I want to touch on some tangents, because it's the end of the video. I guess this first tangent is actually more of a summary. The main reason keto is so high fat is because dietary fat takes the longest to store and burns slowly, making you not hungry for a long time, letting you fast for longer. And when fasting, because your body is already using the dietary fat as fuel, it has a much easier time switching to burning your own fat, rather than switch from sugar to fat and back and forth. That's a big complicated thing. Going from fat to fat's much easier. Thus, on keto, you're losing weight while sleeping, or sitting there playing video games or watching Netflix. Or my entire backlog of Pokemon videos. You should watch those, they're great. Tangent 2. Interestingly, sleep deprivation and stress increase your production of the stress hormone cortisol. And since this video is super long already, I'll leave it as many studies show that a rise in cortisol causes a rise in insulin, which is why stress alone can cause weight gain. And when you look at most medication that has unexpected weight gain as a side effect, it almost always stems from an increase of insulin production, or improving the effectiveness of said insulin. And the medications that cause unexpected weight loss just happen to slow down your pancreas's production of insulin as a side effect. This is why diabulimia, while unhealthy, guarantees rapid weight loss, because it guarantees no insulin in the type 1 diabetic's body, as type 1 diabetics do not produce their own insulin. We're broken. So all in all, if you were to try and summarize everything into one sentence, just like the whole eat less, move more, that's all there is to it thing, I'd say obesity is a hormonal imbalance, not a caloric one. Or overeating does not necessarily cause weight gain. Rather, weight gain causes overeating. Or maybe it's easy. Make your body burn fat instead of sugar. And the weight just falls off. Similarly, as a Dr. Eric Berg puts it, he's a YouTuber that does keto stuff. You should watch him if you're interested in this kind of thing. He kind of says some things that are a little iffy every now and again, but for the most part, he's pretty good. He's one of the guys that helps me do it. You don't lose weight to get healthy. You get healthy to lose weight. Fix your hormone balance, as in get healthy, and the weight falls off effortlessly, without hunger, exercise, or a slowed metabolism, or any of the typical misery involved in weight loss. And while that would have worked perfectly as an enter to this video, there is one more thing that you may have not connected yourself yet. And I just want to clarify that. If it's not about calories in versus calories out at all, then why does that work for some people? And also, are calories totally unimportant then? So first, why does it work for some? Because you can't deny these results. And it's a combination of things. If you have 20, 30, maybe 50 pounds to lose, calorie theory can work without much, if any, metabolism damage, especially if the weight you gained was recent, which goes into that Twinkie Man and even the guy from Super Size Me, which was a documentary about a fit vegan man who began eating nothing but McDonald's, documented the effects, and then showed how a healthy vegan diet can make it go away effortlessly. His gut bacteria, enzymes, and hormone balance were not set up to even digest meat properly, let alone McDonald's, so no wonder he ballooned so quickly, and lost it so fast, bouncing back to his default near effortlessly. And just to tack one more example on here, you see it on magazine covers all the time. How Hollywood actor lost 20 pounds in 2 weeks. Notably, actors will purposefully gain weight for a specific movie or TV role, and then when the shooting is done, it falls off near effortlessly. The diet they're advertising is likely a helpful factor, but not at all the main one. And all of these examples are because of the same thing. They all gained the weight recently. Their bodies never reset their hormonal balance to a bad level. The whole time they were overweight, their bodies were actively trying to bring them back down, but they just didn't let them. So then when the study or the shooting or whatever was done, they returned to their regular diet, and thus the fat on their bodies melts. In other words, weight loss is incredibly easier for these people because they don't have a ton of weight to lose, and they've only had it for a relatively short time. Whereas obesity happens over the course of years and decades normally, and all that time lets your hormonal balances default change into bad levels. But even then, 9 out of 10 morbidly obese people with all that weight to lose that they've had for a long time will fail trying the typical low-fat, calorie-focused diet with exercise routine, but there's always that one that sets the example for all the rest and proves that it's nothing but portion control and exercise. Perhaps it was overcoming the odds and really forcing their bodies into this state. And sure, maybe they lost even over 100 pounds this way, but according to the odds, it'll come back eventually. Unless, of course, you further adapt your lifestyle more, with more modern science, or lower your calories even more, exercise even more, feeling pretty crummy as you age more and more, and eventually, like most folk, eventually just let yourself go. Here's a not so fun fact. There are even instances of perfectly fit famous athletes getting type 2 diabetes because, like I said, it's separate from weight. They just ate too many carbs too often. So all in all, if weight loss or healthy weight maintenance is that hard, you're probably doing it wrong. But I also don't want you to leave this video thinking calories are a sham, because they are important. A small, keyword small, calorie deficit doesn't damage your metabolism much. At least, not as much as a big one. And that's even if the same amount of weight is lost. Just a smaller calorie deficit makes it take longer, obviously, but don't do big calorie deficits, people. It's terrible for you. And plus, if you combine a small calorie deficit with a diet like keto and intermittent fasting, you won't damage your metabolism much, if at all, because your hormones are correct finally. And doing keto with a small calorie deficit does speed up the weight loss in some instances, usually when the deficit is attributed to exercise rather than eating less. So for sure, calories are or can be a factor. And like with Dr. Sims and the 10,000 calorie prisoners, eating way too many does increase weight. But most people aren't eating that many calories, Plus the exercise thing. Intense exercise pairs with keto and fasting excellently, as they all work to empty your glycogen constantly, leading to constant, just infinite loop fat burning. I just don't like exercise and wanted to be an example of hormone balancing alone being more than enough to lose weight effortlessly. So all in all, calories, while they play a role, they are not nearly as important as many people on workout forums, social media, and blogs claim they are. And in my experience, they almost do not matter. If your hormones are set up in a way to not store excess energy as fat, meaning excess insulin, then they won't. And the opposite is also true. Calories almost don't matter, but sugar, in any form, matters a lot more than people think. And yes, grains, whole or not, become sugar. Fruit is mainly sugar. Plenty of vegetables, like carrots and sugar beets, have sugar. Even lentils, like beans, will turn into sugar in the body. But whole grains have vitamins and minerals attached to them, so the sugar is worth it. No, just eat a leafy green vegetable. It's like triple the nutrients. And that's not even looking into how bioavailable they are, meaning how well your body actually uses the nutrients based on the source. But bioavailability is a whole other hour-long topic, so we're done. We're done here. Just no grains have really low bioavailability. And oh my god, this video is long, and I really just barely scratched the surface, and my voice hurts. There are so many specific processes that go on that are just further evidence that I didn't even touch. And if you want a lot more information about this, I think out of all of the books I've read about health, I find the Obesity Code to be one of the best ones. It's by Dr. Jason Fung, who is super cool. And if you're diabetic, he also has the Diabetes Code, which is basically kind of the same book, but it focuses on diabetes instead of obesity specifically. Like, it's a Venn diagram, Anyone who classifies as obese and wants to lose it, I think really needs to give this book a read. And I have another super long video where I talk about some of the dietary changes I did and some more nutrition science, though it is outdated now. And that's here. And also, I recently relaunched a second channel that will go into a lot more health details eventually, as well as fun history, science lessons with lots of energy and all that stuff. So if that interests you, check out Azoth University. Thank you for your time, and thanks for all the kind messages after last time. I got easily like 200 emails, and it was just awesome. Just seeing, just being a source of inspiration. I wonder how much combined weight was lost because of it. That'd be cool to figure out, but that sounds too complicated and too much work, so I'm not gonna do it. But yes, it really can be that easy. And well, if I don't stop now, I'm gonna keep going. So I love you all. Bye. Oh, I almost forgot this is a Pokemon channel. So clearly, it's not because of calories that Snorlax is fat. It's insulin because all it eats are Pokepuffs and berries. Sugar, sugar, sugar. Yeah. Though interestingly, animals and weight gain works totally different from humans. I mean, like, seals are super fat, but that's healthy for them. Whereas having just as much fat but being human makes it unhealthy. Humans are really interesting. That's a whole other video though, so until next time, check out our second channel, As Off You, and never stop using your noggin.